restraint? Was it a bicycle? What is wrong with my brain? Is it the end of me? No, I must still believe. So I'm still alive, you see. Heck yeah, now I'm on my way. But let's stay focused, there's still a job in hand that we must do. Cameras start to click, we know what create is something new. So go Marty and Sarah and Mark and Matt, Owen, Smitty, McCrilly and Jamie Lane in the Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. Stop the clock, we're done, we're rolling. Sound the horn and sing that we are going. 27 hours, that is the time. So let's hop on the bus and let it shine, 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 shine. Say sha la 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 la, 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 sha la 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 la.
Good evening, folks. You are very welcome to Bandido Talks. And folks, what are we going to do today on our show? The worlds of fiction and non-fiction are going to collide. You know, it's shows like these that the Bandido lives for. He gets to merge together a bit of what we would call reality as we know it. And then something that certain people, you know, the world of fiction is interesting, folks, because you have a certain faction of the population who turns their nose up at fiction. And you know, today, in our show, we are of course going to, as I'm sure you could see from the thumbnail, we're going to talk about a real person. A person, perhaps I should rephrase that. A person that we can verify is real. Mr. Ian McGilchrist. We're going to talk about Ian. And then we're going to take another individual who would be called a fictional character. Well, are they really fictional, folks? Or have we just not developed the tools yet? The analytical tools, the scientific tools to verify their existence? I mean, could Avatar Aang be secretly you know, living among us? Could the Avatar, perhaps not here on Earth, but could the Avatar, when I say living among us, I mean in the cosmos, in the universe, could there be an Avatar Aang somewhere? Could there be a world similar to that of Avatar Aang's? We just haven't discovered the world yet. We would say Avatar Aang, who has full control over the four elements, water, earth, fire, and air. We would say that's fictional. Sure, you can't do that. Or can you? So we're going to bring in these two individuals. Ian McGilchrist, who is a real human. He's a real psychiatrist, or certainly was. A brain researcher, a consciousness researcher. Someone who has written an awful lot about the topic of consciousness. The Master and His Emissary. The Matter of Things. I think that's what the second book is called. The Matter of Things. Some of the Ian McGilchrist fans can let me know down in the comments if I've got the name of that second book correct. The Matter of Things. It's something like that. So he's a real person. We're going to talk about Ian. We are also going to talk about the mighty Avatar himself. Avatar Aang. Now I know what you may be thinking. You've got Ian McGilchrist and Avatar Aang. What could possibly be shared in common? What could these two individuals share or have in common? What unifies them? Why are they in our show today? Well, you see, appearances can be deceiving because Ian, of course, the thumbnail image that we have of Ian, he looks like he's in his 60s. And you know, it's a real picture of a real human. Then we've got Avatar Aang, this baldy kid who's the Avatar with his little staff. And they look like they should have no relationship whatsoever. There should be nothing that unifies these two individuals. But you see, folks, there is. And we're going to talk all about it here on our show. Because the world, folks, have you not noticed this? There's a very important concept in life. The concept of balance. And do you ever notice, increasingly, the world in which we live, it would appear that that world is falling, in many respects, out of balance. We're getting out of balance, whether it's at an individual level, ourselves. You know, we've talked many times on the show, folks. We've done many episodes about things like social media, echo chambers that are just confirming your own biased worldview, confirming what it is that you think you already know. We've talked about supernormal stimuli, you know, very addictive food, drugs, alcohol. You know, all of these things, gambling, they can cause one to fall out of what? Out of balance. You know, the world is becoming, ironically enough, you would think with all the technology, it would draw us closer together, wouldn't you? Yet in a strange way, the world is becoming more fragmented than ever. People are spending less time together in a more primitive, we could say, ancestral way. A way that's more consistent with our natural history. We spend so much time with our mobile phones, with technology, and with AI coming in. People are now speaking to the AI. They're treating it as if it's a human. They go on and they type to the AI. Or I suppose now you can actually talk to the damn thing. And it can talk to you. And so you can see, folks, between mobile phones, social media, supernormal food, supernormal processed, high-calorie, garbage food, drugs, alcohol, wacky-backy, the magic mushrooms. We look at all these things and people are falling out of balance. And when you think of someone like the Avatar, think of Avatar Aang. What is Avatar Aang's role? For those of you who have not seen the series, Avatar, the Last Airbender, the legend of Aang. I would highly encourage you to watch the series. Now look, I know people are going to say, it's a kid's show. It's a show for kids. Well, you know, I know on the surface of it, it can look like a kid's show. But believe it or not, folks, if you actually had the openness, and this is going to be a concept we're going to come back to in the show, the openness to just be curious. Allow your mind to wander that direction. And just see what greets you. Because you know, if your reason for not watching Avatar, The Last Airbender, is that it's a kid's show, well, I'm afraid that's just you having a very closed mind. Now, if you just don't like animated TV series or animated movies, if animated content is just not your thing, then fair enough. If you prefer flesh and blood, then you can stick to that. But if your reasoning is, oh, it's a kid's show, I'm an adult and adults don't watch kids shows. If that's your reasoning, I'm afraid that is retarded reasoning. That is just you allowing some nonsense notion that because that would be like saying adults can't read Harry Potter. You know, no adult has a problem reading the Harry Potter books. You don't see people, you know, losing status or feeling embarrassed about reading Harry Potter. There are tons of adults. In fact, all of the internet space with regards to books and specifically Harry Potter books and even the movies, all the content's done by adults that have watched the movies and read the books. Nobody has a problem when it comes to Harry Potter. Harry Potter was written for children. But yet when it comes to something like Avatar, The Last Airbender, oh, but that's for children, that's for kids. I couldn't be seen watching that. Okay, if you want to be self-limiting in that way, if you want to use that as your reasoning for not watching something like Avatar, The Last Airbender, if your logic is, it's a kid's show, that's fine. You can let your logic drop out of your arse and be flushed down the toilet with all the other stuff that goes down the toilet. That's fine. It's not me who's going to lose out. It's you. If you're going to have such a lack of openness to explore, at least run the experiment, you may not like it, but at least you can say you tried. You gave it a go. You know, I have more respect for someone who at least gives it a go. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. But you see someone who just refuses to engage with the material because it's a kid's show, well, you're losing out. If you're going to go through life with that logic, you're probably going to miss a whole bunch of opportunities in life because you're going to overlook things because you think such things are beneath you. But anyway, Avatar Aang, if you've watched the series or you're familiar with the Avatar universe, the Avatar, what is the Avatar's role in this fictional world? His role, or her role, it could be a he or a she, the role of the Avatar is to restore balance to the world. In the fictional Avatar universe, we have 4 nations. We have the Airbenders, the Waterbenders, the Firebenders, and the Earthbenders. They form 4 nations. And if things start to get out of balance, which in the TV series, the Fire Nation decides that it wants to take over the world. Sound familiar? The Fire Nation decides, nope, we aren't happy sharing the planet with the other three elements. We think we are the superior element, so we are going to wage war on the rest of the world, on the waterbenders, on the earthbenders, and on the airbenders. And so the Fire Nation gets out of control, we could say. We could say the world falls out of balance. And whenever this world falls out of balance, the Avatar exists to restore balance. That is why we are calling the show The Power of Balance. And that's Avatar Aang. That's what the Avatar does. The Avatar is the master of all four elements. The Avatar is the only entity in that universe that's able to bend water, bend air, bend earth, and bend fire. All the other people in that universe can only bend one element. But the Avatar is the master of all four elements, meaning that if the world gets out of balance, so if someone gets a little high and mighty, if a group within one of these elements gets high and mighty, like the Fire Nation, they decide they want to conquer the world. The Avatar is there to restore balance, to ensure there's a check and balance. Because if the world falls out of balance, it could be destroyed. So the Avatar is there to maintain balance. Now, how does this relate? How is Ian McGilchrist coming into this? So we sort of know now, we have a sort of rough basic summary of what the Avatar does. So Avatar Aang, his responsibility in the series, the Fire Nation has got out of control. There's now been a whole bunch of disruption injected into the universe. The universe is falling out of balance. So Avatar Aang has to come into the equation and restore balance. Essentially stop the Fire Nation from destroying the world. From essentially turning everybody else into their slaves. So Avatar Aang, he has to restore balance. He has to, as a kid, he has to very quickly learn all four elements and become master of his Avatar state. Once he enters into the Avatar state, he's basically, if we're talking probabilities, he's pretty much untouchable. If he can gain control of his Avatar state and master all four elements, he will be able to put the Fire Nation back into balance again. And the world, as a result, falls back into balance. That's Avatar Aang. But what about Ian McGilchrist? How does he relate to this idea of the power of balance? Well, you see, folks, what have we been talking about very recently? You know, let's say in the last few weeks, the Bandido has been airing his grievances with the scientific world. Now look, the Bandido, he's a fair man. He is a fair man. And the Bandido has, of course, engaged in a critical analysis of religion. Because, you know, we've talked before on the show, religion, like anything, can be weaponized to have people do a whole bunch of stuff that isn't, let's just say, perhaps in their best interests or the interests of the people around them. That's not a leap to say that. So religion isn't inherently bad, but it can be weaponized. And if you are a worshipper of some religion, you need to have your eyes open and your ears to the ground to make sure that you don't end up getting manipulated and exploited by this thing that you're worshipping. Because it would be very easy to just turn your brain off, allow your logic to fall out of your pants, and just blindly worship this thing that is actually going to try and exploit you. So you don't want that to happen. And we've done a number of shows, folks, talking about this, talking about how religion, if you're a religious person, nobody's saying you can't be a religious person. But if we want to be professionals, and we want to analyze things for what they are, you need to be careful that the thing that you're worshipping doesn't have malevolent intentions, it's not going to exploit you. So we've talked about that. We've talked about how religion can be used as a weapon. And you need to maintain your logic. You need to maintain your critical thinking to make sure that you don't walk into a problem or you don't step in shite. But the Bandido's a fair man, because anyone who has seen some of our shows where we've been critically analysing the good and the, we could argue, not so good of religion, people might say, the Bandido's picking on religion. He's picking on religion. Well, you see, I'm a fair man. And in the last number of shows, we've done a number of shows, both lessons in nature, mind streams. We even did a live show here on Bob Lazar, where we talked extensively about science, why science is not your savior, and why you shouldn't be worshipping science. Just in the same way that a religious person shouldn't just turn their logic off and blindly worship their religion or their fucking church or their priest or any group. In the same way, you shouldn't just blindly worship science. You shouldn't just blindly worship the researchers and the chief medical officers and the professors at the universities, because everybody has an agenda. Everyone has an agenda. And yes, there are times in life, folks, where other people's agenda will overlap with yours and you will extract benefit. But there will be other times where their agenda could fuck you over if you're not paying attention. And again, the great example that we can use for science not being your savior was the very small event that happened in 2020. And again, I will continue to bring this up, folks, because I know some of you have long-term memory loss and you can't remember all the way back to 2020. But we all know what happened in 2020. And we all remember what we were told to do. What we were told was in the best interests of the wider population and for you also, for your health. Remember, we were told we needed to mask, double mask even. We had to socially distance 2 meters. You know, if you went 1.8 meters, holy fuck, detrimental consequences. You were fucked if you went at 1.8 meters of distance to somebody else. Remember that? We had to, shuffle in the shops 2 meters with our mask on. And then to top it all off, you have to shut your business down. You basically have to economically handicap yourself and lose a bunch of money. And then to top it all off, remember you were told, in the interest of saving grandma. Remember grandma? Remember the emotional argument that was used? Grandma! Remember you were told that you had to inject stuff into your body, not just to save grandma, but to save yourself. But Jesus, you needed to, inject stuff into yourself for your health. And remember, folks, all of this information came from where? That's right. It came from the science. The scientific evidence said that you needed to mask. The scientific evidence said that you needed to socially distance. And you needed to not visit your grandmother and let her die in a nursing home with no contact with anyone. She just had to die alone, and you weren't allowed to give her a proper send-off. She was just buried by some fucking group of schmucks out in a graveyard, wearing fucking fumigation kit. You know that, those fumigation masks and all of these things that people were wearing? They didn't even look like humans. Remember that? The scientific evidence said that, you had to socially distance and you couldn't visit your grandmother or some other sick relative, and they had to die alone. And they were buried alone. Remember that? The science told you to do that too. The science also said that you were guaranteed that getting an injection was really safe. The chief medical officers and the professors at the universities and the researchers told you that the scientific evidence said that getting these injections was going to be beneficial for your health. Now, of course, folks, 6 years on, retrospectively looking back, we can all see that every single one of those things was a waste of fucking time. You didn't need to do any of them, but the scientific evidence at the time said you did. So if you need any more evidence that science is not your savior, just look at the event that took place back in 2020. All the things you were told to do under the guidance of the scientific evidence, which we now know you didn't have to do any of them. Zero! So I'm a fair man. I will critically analyse religion, it's good and it's not so good, and I will critically analyse science, it's good and it's not so good. But folks, what is happening in 2026? I mean, we live in this world now where people literally exist at the fucking poles. You either live in the North Pole with the polar bears, or you live in the South Pole with the penguins. You know, you can't live in between. You can't live at a moderately temperate region on Earth. You can't go to the equator. You can't find a nice little warm tropical island. No, you can't do any of that. You have to live at the poles. What am I getting at? What I'm getting at is, in 2026, everybody is feeling the need to dig their fucking trench. Everybody is feeling the need to explain to you and I that they've got it all worked out. They know what you should be eating. They know what's happening in the world politically. They know this, they know that. Consciousness, no, that is just, an emergent property of the brain. It's machines all the way down. AI is wonderful. I know what's going to happen with AI. Everybody now, folks, has a fucking opinion. And you see everyone's opinion. They refuse to use their openness, their curiosity, and their imagination. Everybody in 2026 is stuck in an echo chamber. They are stuck in an echo chamber where they only listen to other people that confirm their worldview. This happens in the scientific community. FYI. The whole point of science, when it's done properly, is not to confirm what you know. It's to disprove what you currently know. That should be your perspective as a scientist. Scientists are supposed to be the epitome of, let's just say, humility personified. That's what a scientist is supposed to be. A scientist is supposed to be someone who is actively searching for information and evidence that disproves what they currently know. They welcome the fact that they're wrong. That's what a true scientist does. A true scientist rejoices when they're wrong. They are actually happy. They basically want to be in this active pursuit of constantly trying to find something that counters what it is that they know. In order to be able to do this, folks, you must have openness, curiosity, and an active imagination. You need these three things to be a great scientist. If you don't have them, if you don't have openness, if you don't have curiosity, and if you don't have an active imagination, do you know what you do? Well, what ends up happening is you get your fucking shovel and you start digging. And then you see whenever you hear someone that says something that slightly contradicts what you think you knew about the world. You know what people do in 2026? Instead of putting the shovel down, so instead of going, whoa, hold on a second. Someone has just brought new information to my attention. This is interesting. So instead of putting the shovel down and, using the little rope to climb out of your hole and say, hold on, I heard you saying something there that was interesting. Please explain. And you sit and you actively listen and you engage with the person. Instead of doing that, you know what people do in 2026? Instead of putting the shovel down, getting out of their hole that they're currently digging, and listening to some other perspective that may contradict or disprove what it is that they think they know about the world. You know what people do in 2026? They keep digging. They actually recruit other people to help them dig quicker. And you know why they want to dig quicker? Because the quicker they can dig, the further away they can get from the surface. And the further away they get from the surface, the less likely it is they're going to hear somebody else at the surface who contradicts what it is that they say. And so what ends up happening is this person recruits a whole bunch of other diggers, and they all dig their way. And then before they know it, they are so far away from the surface of the earth that they're in the dark and they can only talk to one another. In other words, they've created an echo chamber, just like what happens on social media. The algorithms on social media, Instagram, Facebook, fucking YouTube, all of these things, they are designed to trap you in an echo chamber whereby you only hear people that confirm your worldview. It's not throwing you something that's going to make you think. It's not throwing you something that's going to make you pause and say, oh, hold on, I mightn't have this right. No, the algorithm just puts you in an echo chamber and feeds you what it thinks you want to hear. In other words, to use our analogy, the algorithm gets down into the hole with you and helps you dig your hole. And the algorithm just moves you further away. The social media algorithms just move you further away from the surface of the earth. And the further away you move from the surface of the earth, how likely is it that you're going to encounter some other new person with a new perspective when you're 1,000 feet under the ground in your hole? The only person you are going to have access to, the only people's opinions that you're going to have access to are the people who were digging the fucking hole with you. And this is what is happening with modern day science. Modern day science has gotten itself into an echo chamber. People who are involved in modern day science, they are in echo chambers. They have their shovels, they are digging their holes, and they are not interested in listening to any new perspective that might disprove or contradict what it is that they think they know about the world. And so what's happening, folks? Everybody is losing their openness to discussion, their curiosity to explore and find out new things about the world from new people who have different perspectives, and people are shutting off their imagination. And that's science, folks, in 2026. All these scientists that you're listening to, they all think, they sit there like yogis on the fucking mountain, thinking that they're right. They've surrounded themselves with a whole bunch of yes people who agree with what they say. In other words, they're in one big, enormous echo chamber. Everybody's telling everybody else within this echo chamber what they want to hear, and it's just marvelous. Nobody has to invest. You know that painful feeling, folks, when you think you know something about the world. You know that painful, sinking feeling when you have a perspective about the world and new information's brought and you realize, oh dear, I was wrong. I was either entirely wrong or I was partly wrong. You know that initial, and we can't avoid it, folks. There's an initial, and it might last for a very short amount of time. There's a sinking feeling where you go, oh dear, I got that wrong. But then you engage your openness, you engage your curiosity, you engage your imagination, and then you're over the hump very quickly. And you're like, great, okay, well, I found out something new and interesting that's updating the information in my mind. It's going to allow me to clear out more distortion. It's going to allow me to generate more accuracies about the facts of reality. It allows me to see the world with a little more clarity, with a little more openness. And it's drawing me further away from an echo chamber whereby other people within the echo chamber are just confirming what it is that I know about the world. They're not challenging me. Now, why am I saying all this? Well, you see, our non-fiction person in the thumbnail, Mr. Ian McGilchrist. You see, Ian McGilchrist, whether you agree or disagree with Ian McGilchrist's perspective on God, what he thinks God is, and, I'll just give you a very quick synopsis, or at least a piece of information that's important. Ian McGilchrist does not think that there's a man up there with a fucking beard tinkering with the universe. No, that is not Ian McGilchrist's version of God. He doesn't think that there's some fucking creative individual up above there, tinkering with the mechanics of the universe. He has a different perspective on God, what it represents. You may agree or disagree with that perspective. He has also done a whole bunch of research into consciousness. Is consciousness just an emergent property of the brain, or is there more to consciousness? He's done a whole bunch of digging into that. Whether you agree with him or not is actually irrelevant. He's done a lot of research into the left and right hemispheres of the brain. I'm not even going to attempt to rehash his explanation because I'm afraid, folks, the Bandido, one thing that we talk about here on the show, man's got to know his limitations. Man's got to know what he can do and what he can't do. And I am not an intellectual, as you can probably tell. And for me to try and sit here and summarize the technicalities of the left and right hemispheres of the brain is going to make me look like a retard. That's the long and short of it, because I do not have the depth of understanding that Ian McGilchrist has. But needless to say, when you read Ian McGilchrist's work and you listen to him, there are plenty of podcasts out there where he has done episodes talking with people about consciousness, about how he believes that consciousness is not just an emergent property of the brain, about how he believes that you do in fact have free will, about how he believes that modern day society is becoming very left hemisphere driven, meaning that modern day society is hell bent on confirming what it is that it knows about the world. In other words, modern day society, science in the modern world, is hell bent on just finding any solution, any answer, and wrapping it up in a nice little neat present with a bow on it and saying, there you go, there's your explanation, case closed, mystery solved. That's what the left hemisphere of your brain wants to do. The left hemisphere just wants an answer. Any answer will do. The left hemisphere can be a bit deluded, but it's very useful. The left hemisphere, it works in conjunction with the right hemisphere. I'm not saying you would want to do away with your left hemisphere, not at all. Your left hemisphere is extremely important for allowing you to focus on a task. It allows you to get super focused and dialed in on a specific task. But the left hemisphere, unlike the right hemisphere of the brain, the right hemisphere, the best way I could summarize it without sounding like a retard, is that the left hemisphere, I want you to think of it like, I don't know. You know that saying we have, you can't see the wood from the trees. Or you can't see the trees from the forest from the trees, whatever way you want to phrase it. The left hemisphere is extremely good at telling you a whole bunch of information about the nature of the bark on the tree, for example. So the left hemisphere is super good at dialing in and getting very focused, and it can tell you a lot about the bark on the tree. But the left hemisphere, unlike the right hemisphere is able to pull back from the bark of the tree. And it's able to see the tree in its entirety and the forest as a whole. That's the difference, in essence, between the two hemispheres of your brain. The left hemisphere can get very dialed in. It wants answers. It wants solutions. It wants any answer it can get its hands on that just resolves the problem. The right hemisphere pulls back. It takes a broader view of the situation. It can see the wood from the trees. It can see the forest as a whole. Now, both parts of your brain are extremely important. They work together. But you see, folks, Ian McGilchrist has been on the receiving end, as you could probably imagine, of a whole bunch of criticism. Because people are saying, well, look, consciousness, there's nothing special about it. Yeah, all this stuff about the hemispheres and all that, yeah, that's just interesting, you know. There's nothing really to see there, though. We have a perfectly legitimate scientific explanation as to why the hemispheres perform in this way. We can prove with the evidence that consciousness is just an emergent property. Okay, look, whether you agree or disagree with Ian McGilchrist when it comes to his work on the left and right hemispheres of the brain, when it comes to his work on consciousness, when it comes to his perspectives on God, what God is, his perspectives on religion, his perspectives on the Christian mythos, as he calls it, I don't give a fuck if you agree or disagree with him. Because what Ian McGilchrist has, which pretty much most other scientists don't, is he has maintained his openness, his curiosity, and his active imagination. He has all three of those things functioning at 100% of their capacity. Ian McGilchrist is very open to the idea that he might be right, that he might be wrong. In other words, he has a whole bunch of intellectual humility. Ian McGilchrist is not digging a hole so that he can run away from the surface, from the ground, so that he doesn't have to hear what anybody else has to say. Ian McGilchrist is happy to debate people on his point of view, on what he has discovered through his research. He is open to the idea that he could be wrong about some of it, right about some of it. He's more than happy to adjust his perspective. In other words, folks, he has a balanced approach to the questions of life. Balance. Ian McGilchrist is balanced. Avatar Aang is balanced. Avatar Aang exists for the sole purpose of restoring balance and maintaining balance in the world. Ian McGilchrist is effectively like a human equivalent of the Avatar. The problem is, Ian McGilchrist is just one man. He doesn't have mastery over air, fire, water, and earth. And Ian McGilchrist is outnumbered by a whole bunch of other people who think that they have life sorted out. You know those other scientists that say, look at my study, look at my evidence. The evidence says. And they aren't open to even listening to what Ian McGilchrist has to say. They're not willing to engage their imagination and just use their imagination to try and even think about how a world could look or could function through an Ian McGilchrist perspective. They won't even entertain the idea. They just shut it down, they pick up their shovel, and they continue to dig. And Ian McGilchrist is a great example, folks, of what a scientist should be. Again, whether you agree or disagree with him is absolutely irrelevant. What we're looking at here is we're looking at how Ian McGilchrist approaches the most fundamental questions of life. Questions of how we came into existence, what does consciousness mean, how did it come into existence? I mean, can we just separate consciousness from matter? These are very important questions. And Ian McGilchrist approaches these questions with openness, curiosity, and an imagination that's active. Most other scientists and people in the field, and people generally in life, tend to approach questions with a closed mind and a predetermined answer that they are going to give. And this answer that they are going to give, they are never going to change that answer. They aren't going to change their stance. They are going to put their flag in the ground. And that flag ain't ever going to move from that location. They're going to keep digging. And so what we could say is, folks, Ian McGilchrist, like any great, competent scientist, should be balanced. You should be balanced. Balanced insofar as you should be willing to entertain new information coming from any source. Now, of course, nobody's saying you can't have an opinion. Ian McGilchrist has an opinion about how he thinks life works. But that opinion isn't set in stone. He's more than happy to update his worldview. And he's more than happy to entertain discussions with other people who have different worldviews to him. And then through discussion and through throwing out ideas and through trying to find ways to disprove what he knows about the world, he's now actually moving closer to the truth than someone who's just digging their hole. We've all come across these people, folks. You know, these people who, no matter what it is that you say to them, they just go, ha, yeah. Ah, you're just very open. You're a bit eccentric. The science says, the evidence says. Remember what the definition for evidence is, folks. Please allow me to remind you what the definition of evidence is. Evidence is nothing other than the available body of facts and information that is used to decipher if a proposition or belief is true or valid. That is what the definition of evidence is. The key word being the available body of facts and information. The available. So see, when I hear people say, Ian McGilchrist, he's off waffling about consciousness and about how you can't separate matter and consciousness, and the hemispheres of the brain, we run these experiments where we knock out the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere comes to these deluded conclusions, and the West is kind of moving in a very left hemisphere driven fashion. People laugh and go, he's on the wacky backy old McGilchrist. He must be smoking weed. He's talking out of his arse. That's what people say. That's what some people will say. But you see, these people who criticize Ian McGilchrist, they subscribe to the notion that it's all about the available evidence. And to those idiots, I would say, what happens if you don't have all of the available evidence at your disposal right now? Is it a leap to say that we haven't worked out all the secrets of the universe yet? So you should not, the fact that you know that now, the fact that you know that evidence is nothing other than the available body of evidence. So not only can the evidence be suppressed, the way the big institutions in the world, they sort of, I don't know if you've realized, but they tend to have this thirst for controlling the flow of information. They have a thirst for controlling the flow of available facts and information, also known as evidence. So not only can evidence actually be suppressed, that's obvious, folks, we know that. But we may actually just genuinely not have discovered everything there is to know about the universe. That is also a possibility. This is why I say your openness, your curiosity, and your imagination being active are extremely important. Some of the greatest, in fact, I would nearly argue, some of the greatest scientific discoveries came before modern day science. What scientific tools did those people have at their disposal? Well, all they had was their openness, their curiosity, and their imagination, and a willingness to explore possibilities. You didn't have the tools that you have now. Folks, the power of balance. This is why we're talking about Ian McGilchrist and Avatar Aang. Ian McGilchrist and Avatar Aang. One is a fictional person, the other is non-fiction. They both represent a spirit that one has and so does the other. They both share a similar spirit. This idea of balance, approaching the world through the perspective of balance. When you're digging your hole, folks, down you dig, and you create your little echo chamber with your few mates who are down there digging with you, that is going to lead you to an unbalanced worldview, because you're shutting off all the other opinions and pieces of information that could otherwise update your current worldview. You're shutting them off. So you are going to move closer to an unbalanced worldview, a distorted worldview. It's the same with Avatar Aang. If the Avatar doesn't exist, then what can happen is the world can fall out of balance. In the series, The Last Airbender, the Fire Nation, as I said, they wage a war on the entire planet, on the entire world. So the world starts to fall out of balance. And Avatar Aang, who basically locked himself away in an iceberg for 100 years, he gets discovered. He gets broken out of the ice, and the Avatar re-emerges back into the world again. And his role is to restore balance. Avatar Aang must bring balance to the world. And when we look at our own modern day world, folks, as I said in our introduction, it's not very difficult to see that people in the world are falling brutally out of balance. Whether it's the food they are eating, causing them to be a misshapen, obese mess, alcohol they are consuming, drugs they are taking, wacky-backy that they're smoking, social media, which is just taking up enormous amounts of their time, their energy, and their attention, placing them in an echo chamber whereby they are being fed information that confirms their worldview, doesn't challenge their worldview, it confirms their worldview, placing them in an echo chamber and leading them towards unbalanced conclusions, unbalanced worldviews. When you think about how nature is just becoming more and more, it's becoming a smaller part of everyday life for people. People just get used to the concrete jungle. You didn't evolve in a concrete jungle. You evolved with nature. You evolved with it. And again, people spend more and more time indoors. They spend more and more time in the city. The noise pollution, just of cars, it's very agitating for your brain. The air pollution, the light pollution. People are moving away from their natural roots. And that's another reason why people are falling out of balance. They're not getting in touch with nature. So when you think of all these things, folks, social media, lack of contact with nature, concrete jungles, drugs, alcohol, supernormal food, gambling, porn, all of these things lead to people falling out of balance. And when you fall out of balance, who gets the raw end of the deal out of life? If your health falls out of balance, you're in pain, your life is in jeopardy. If you allow your life and your time to be taken up by social media and addictive algorithms, you waste your precious waking hours. If you spend all your time in a concrete jungle being assaulted by all of these highly stimulating things and you don't get into nature, you can't clear your mind. You can't sort of decontaminate your mind and your imagination. You don't have room in your mind to think. There's so many things in your house. There's so many things to do. So many distractions. How do you engage your imagination when it's so full of shit? You're out of balance. And whenever you fall out of balance, you get the raw end of the deal in life. When the fictional world falls out of balance and the Fire Nation start waging war on the other nations, the Water Nation, the Air Nation, the Earth Nation, the world falls out of balance. And that's not good for anyone. But Avatar Aang is there to restore balance. That's his role. He's the symbol of balance. Ian McGilchrist is a good living example of a balanced way of approaching life's most important questions, and even more broadly, a more balanced way of just generally approaching life. If you're going to take one thing away from this, folks, it's the power of balance. That's what we've called the show today. The modern world is constantly trying to pull you out of balance. It's trying to put you into an unbalanced state. Because when you're in an unbalanced state, when you're fat and obese because you eat a whole pile of shit, when you're drugged out of your head, when you're drunk because you're just drinking so much alcohol, when you're on the magic mushrooms, when you're stuck gambling away all your money in your life, when you're stuck in a social media echo chamber thanks to addictive algorithms, you are easier to control, manipulate, and exploit. When you put yourself in a vulnerable state, or in these vulnerable states, these unbalanced states, when you're in an unbalanced state, you're vulnerable to being exploited. It is within some other person's interest to have you fat and obese, to have your health going awry, to have you hooked on drugs, to have you consuming a whole bunch of alcohol, to have you glued to your phone on social media, to have you stuck in an echo chamber whereby you're only getting fed information that confirms your worldview. It's within someone else's interest to have you be more distant from nature, from your ancestral roots. It's within someone else's interest for you to allow your left hemisphere to just run riot. Because when your left hemisphere of your brain runs riot, all you can see is the fucking bark on the tree. Imagine this is the tree. Your left hemisphere is like this. It can't see that the bark is part of a fucking tree. It can't see that the tree is part of a forest. It can't see that there's a predator stalking you. You're so focused on the bark. Ooh, this is very interesting bark. That before you know it, you're getting the arse chewed off you by a jaguar or a black panther. The modern world is allowing its left hemisphere, the left hemisphere side of the brain, we could say, to run riot. People are just tuning out. They're in their little echo chambers. They're fat as pigs. They're drugged out of their eyeballs. They're addicted to gambling, addicted to social media, distant from nature. Their mind is totally distracted and contaminated with garbage. And when you're distracted and your imagination is unable to function in an active, accurate way, you start coming to bizarre-looking conclusions about life. You start coming to very distorted conclusions about life. and the more distorted your conclusions about life, the increased probability there is of you making mistakes. And if you start making enough mistakes, folks, and the mistakes become bigger and wilder, sooner or later you're going to get yourself in a big old pickle. And it's going to be you who loses out. So that's what we take from this episode, folks. It's the power of balance. Avatar Aang is balanced. He is the master of all four elements. He's able to enter the avatar state, and he is the one that brings balance to the world. When the world starts to fall out of balance, he brings balance. You need to be like Avatar Aang. You need to look at your own life like a little world. You need to look at your own life the way Avatar Aang looks at his world. You need to be selfish, folks. That's why you hear me talk about being selfish. That word has been demonized. Selfishness is a bad thing. Fucking no way it is. If you haven't got your own house in order, if you aren't looking after number one, and if number one hasn't got his or her ducks in a row, and if number one is not in optimal circumstances, how the fuck can you expect to be able to effectively help other people if you yourself are in suboptimal circumstances? It is a necessity that you look after number one first. You need to be selfish. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. To actually help other people, you need to be selfish. But when you think about it logically, if you're broke and you've no money and your health is completely, down the toilet and you're a mess, how are you going to help someone in that state? You can't. You certainly can't do it effectively or as effectively as you otherwise could. So you need to start looking at your life in the same way that Avatar Aang looks at his world. Avatar Aang sees himself as the entity, as the individual who is responsible for restoring balance to the world. You need to start viewing yourself as an avatar, like Avatar Aang, and forget about everybody else. Forget about solving the world's problems. Fuck me, folks. Forget about that. Focus on your own little world. Get your own house in order. And start trying to bring balance to your own personalized, individualized world first. Get that right first. Don't put the cart before the horse. You be the avatar of your own world. Think of yourself. Draw inspiration from Avatar Aang. Look at your own world, your own individual world. Forget about your mother's world, your father's world, your brothers, your friends, your fucking girlfriend, your boyfriend, your dog and your cat. Just focus on your own world. Are you in balance? Are you, as the avatar of your own world, are you restoring balance in your world? Are you maintaining balance in your world? Look at it. Critically analyze it. Are you fat as a fool, out of shape, obese, and your health is going down the toilet? In other words, you're out of balance. If you are, you need to restore balance. We've done a number of shows, folks. Go look at the lessons in nature. Go look at the mind streams that we've done here on the channel. I've talked about, if we look at it from an ancestral point of view, what is your best bet when it comes to dietary practices? Or find someone else that you trust. Get yourself in balance with regards to your health. That should be a priority. Look, are you addicted to fucking gambling? Are you addicted to alcohol? Are you hooked on drugs? I'm not saying it's easy, folks. Are you addicted to social media? Are you stuck in an echo chamber? Are you stuck in a concrete jungle? When was the last time you were out in nature? How contaminated is your mind? How disorderly is your house? How much is your work infringing upon your ability to see the world clearly? If you are out of balance, folks, you are in a disadvantageous set of circumstances. You're more likely to be manipulated and exploited. You need to get into balance. Being the avatar, folks, don't misunderstand me. Being the avatar is not easy. Avatar Aang has the hardest job of anybody in his world. He is responsible for maintaining balance in the entire world. That is extremely challenging. It's extremely difficult. So I'm not saying that it's easy for you to be the avatar of your own world. Nobody's saying that. But folks, nobody's gonna save you. You do realize that. There's no knight in shining armor. There's no other avatar that's going to come into your life and restore balance to your life. The only person who can act as the avatar in your life is you. You need to take responsibility. There's nothing you can do about it. That is one undeniable fact of reality. Nobody's going to solve problems in your life for you. Nobody's going to float in and say, it's okay, I'm the avatar, I'll solve all your problems. Only you can do that. Only you have the ability to restore balance to your own life. Nobody can do it for you. People can advise you. People can recommend what you should or should not do. But only you can carry out the mechanical action of restoring balance to your world. Just like Avatar Aang is the only person who can carry out the mechanical action of restoring balance to his world. It's not easy, folks, but nobody else is going to do it for you. You have no other option. So you can either choose not to take responsibility, suffer from falling into an unbalanced state, and get manipulated and exploited by other people, or you can accept, take control of your life. It's actually very empowering. It's a very empowering thought. You can actually take control of your existence. You're the fucking avatar. Think about it. You are the avatar. You're the master of all four elements. You can enter the avatar state. You just need to train yourself. That's what Avatar Aang needed to do. He just needed to train himself. He needed to focus. He needed to get rid of distraction. He needed to get in touch with his avatar spirit. If he's distracted, he can't do that. But the notion that you are the avatar is very empowering. It means you don't have to wait for someone to give you the green light. You can do it. And it's the same when we look at Ian McGilchrist. In terms of how we should approach information, in terms of how we should approach the big questions in life, Ian McGilchrist can teach us whether you agree or not with his current conclusions, which he would have the humility to update if new information comes in, whether you agree or disagree with him. What we can all learn from Ian McGilchrist is the way a scientist should behave, the way a scientist should approach the big questions. You should approach life with an openness, a curiosity, and an imagination that is not contaminated but active and willing to explore possibilities and see where life takes it. That's what McGilchrist can teach us. And folks, when we pair these two together, when we take what Avatar Aang can teach us, Avatar Aang teaches us that we can be the avatar in our own life. We can selfishly look at our own existence and say, you know what? I'm going to bring balance to my own life. And once I, as the avatar of my own existence, bring balance to my life, I'm actually now in a position to help other people. I'm in a position to be of value to other people. And I can contribute in a way that other people are going to respect. I'm going to contribute in a way where other people will then value me. That's what Avatar Aang can teach us. Avatar Aang can give us this empowering sense that we actually can control our own destinies to a certain degree. If we engage with life in the right way, we can restore balance. We may not be able to restore balance to the world as a whole. That's not what I'm talking about. No one person can do that. Man's got to know what he can and what he can't do. But what you can do is restore balance to your own life. That's a very empowering thought. That's what Avatar Aang can teach us. The ability to restore balance to our own life is very much within our control. And then Ian McGilchrist, we can pair that with Ian McGilchrist's approach to answering the big questions, his approach to analysing life as a whole. Openness, curiosity, active imagination. Don't dig your trench. Don't allow your left hemisphere to delude you, to basically deceive you into this deluded state that you're going to put yourself into. Don't allow your left hemisphere to have you glued to the bark of the tree, to the point where you're unable to see the tree as a whole, the forest as a whole, and all the organisms that inhabit the forest. Don't allow that to happen. How do you prevent your left hemisphere from running riot in life? From restricting your vision of the world, from putting the blinkers on. Your left hemisphere, how do we stop it from just conjuring nonsense out of thin air? Openness, curiosity, and an active imagination. When we pair what Avatar Aang can teach us with what Ian McGilchrist can teach us, all of a sudden, folks, probability-wise, we have increased exponentially our capacity to restore balance to our own life. And the more balance we can restore to our lives, the clearer we view the reality in which we live, the more optimal our decisions become, the more benefit we can extract from life. So, folks, that's the splurge. That's the Friday evening splurge. For those of you who aren't aware of Ian McGilchrist, I would encourage you to go check out his books. Go check out The Master and His Emissary. Go check out The Matter of Things. I think that's what it's called. Go listen to him on YouTube. He's done plenty of interviews, plenty of speeches, plenty of podcasts. No excuse. And it's the same with Avatar Aang. If you haven't seen Avatar, The Last Airbender, the legend of Avatar Aang, don't allow this sort of nonsense notion that it's a kid's show. It's not a fucking kid's show. Anybody who's watched it will view Avatar, The Last Airbender in exactly the same way as anyone would view Harry Potter. Harry Potter is not a kid's book. It can be a kid's book. Kids can certainly extract certain parts out of the Harry Potter story that they like, but so can adults. But you see, if you're very closed-minded, if you've got no curiosity, if your imagination just isn't there, then that's fine. Don't watch Avatar The Last Airbender. Don't even try. You just do whatever you're doing. You dig your hole. What odds does it make to me? But that's the thing, folks. You can find these resources. You can find Ian McGilchrist's books and his interviews, speeches, and podcasts. You can find Avatar Aang the series very easily. Just look it up. Buy the DVDs. Easy peasy. You can even probably get it on Netflix or Amazon Prime, probably. Something like that. But anyway, folks, let's see if there's anybody in the live chat. There doesn't look like there's anybody in the live chat. We've a big blank live chat. Avatar Aang, Ian McGilchrist. Balance, folks! Maybe to ensure that the Bandido's ego doesn't inflate too much, it is critical that he doesn't get any live chats. Because, you know, if the Bandido started to get too many live chats, maybe his ego, his, grandiosity would grow out of control. He'd become an egomaniac, a megalomaniac, whatever the right word is. And so perhaps the universe is trying to impose balance on the Bandido. That's why the Bandido has no live chats. It's all about balance, folks. Or it could just be that nobody tuned into the show. But you know what? Here's the thing. If you feel so inclined, folks, feel free to give us a little thumbs up. Hit the little like button. And then get down into the comments section. So if you're watching this live show replay, get down into the comments. Let me know what you thought. Do you agree or disagree with the Bandido's notion of using what Avatar Aang can bring to the table and what Ian McGilchrist can bring to the table, merge them together, and all of a sudden, we have a more balanced worldview? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comments. And then finally, folks, if you like in general what we do here at Bandido Talks, feel free to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Excuse me. My goodness me. The Bandido had a frog in his throat there. Anyway, if you find interesting, folks, any of this content, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Because, you can be notified of any of our live shows. The Bandido does his live shows on Universal Bandido Time. What does that mean? UBT means he does his live shows as and when he feels like it. On the days he wants, at the times he wants. You're going to have to subscribe to get notified when we have a live show coming your direction here on YouTube. Again, folks, I would also remind you that we're not just live here on YouTube, we're live over on Rumble. Our live shows are completely different over on Rumble. It's more political, more US based in terms of the stories. So if you're more interested in a few political stories and lessons to extract from these political stories, head over to Rumble. Use the scrolling black banner below. Subscribe to Bandido Talks over on Rumble. Subscribe here on YouTube. And then finally, folks, the Bandido is somewhat active over on X. Again, I would encourage you to follow over there because you will again be notified of any upcoming live shows. Every now and again, I'll do a little written tweet in reference to some sort of a video that we've done. So if you're wanting notifications, a little bit of written content, follow over on X. Folks, that is everything from me this Friday evening. Enjoy the rest of your morning, your afternoon, your evening, your day in general. Enjoy your incoming weekend. And with all of that said, folks, it is over and out. This evening, here on YouTube, from the Bandido.